and we have fabulous panelists with us today for the session on advocacy for country-led nutrition financing, trying to reach altogether a new consensus that would last after the N4G summit. So I'm very happy to ask for the panelists to come on stage now. And we Dan Irvin from World Vision, Asma Latif from the SDG2 Advocacy Hub, as well as Chris Leather from N4D, as well as Danish Irshad from NI, and also Civil Society Network, and also, and I think I'm not mistaken, the co-chair also of the GNR. Stakeholders group. So I think that we said many times now that we are facing a new financing environment, and needless to say that we need to adapt to it, and we cannot pretend that this is business as usual. We need to find new ways of working, and this also applies for our advocacy roles. And we need to work as working partners more than ever. It's really the time to do that. So today, we will also hear about an interesting study that was developed and that you would find insightful information from the perspectives also of countries in terms of what's needed really to make advocacy successful, if technology allows. For our countries, and the idea is also to really have this lens of country-led, country-driven, and what makes sense for countries, and to really rally around those country priorities that are highlighted in the national nutrition plans and stand behind them with the different expertise and resources that we have. So to give us a bit of linkages between the different sessions, this morning there was also a side event around financing. So I would like to hand over to Asma Latif first to share some insights and key takeaways from this session. And then Chris Leather will also come in for this. Thank you. Asma, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sonia. And yes, it's been a rich day of discussion around financing, and really appropriate, as you say, in terms of the times we live in. So I wrote down a few things that struck me from the morning session, how important country leadership is. And we saw that in each of the examples. But I think something His Excellency Dr. Dirige Duguma mentioned was the importance of having one plan, one budget, one report. And I think that's really stuck with me. And that's what everyone needs to rally around. And it's the government's approach. I was struck also by, the conversation around how do you, I think there was a question from the team from El Salvador asking, how do you make the money come faster? And that was a really interesting back and forth. I mean, the speaker from Pakistan, Nadia Rahman, said, if there's a crisis, the money comes very fast. And so I think there's an opportunity there in using the resources that are coming to respond to crises more effectively so that they have a longer-term lasting impact. And we've talked a lot about the development humanitarian nexus, but we really need to get serious about that, partly because the resources are drying up. And so how do we use every dollar we're spending more effectively? And we are seeing a lot more disasters, so we need to build resilience and do the prevention the harder work of preventing backsliding. And then maybe just one last takeaway, and I've heard Abby Perry say this a few times, we really need to meet countries where they are. So if a country is working towards a particular initiative, be it strengthening school meals or something else, how do we leverage that interest and the money that's going into that to get better nutrition outcomes? I think those would be three sort of takeaways for me from this morning.
Thank you so much, Asma, for those three takeaways. Indeed, every dollar counts and needs to be well invested now. The donors want to see the returns upon investment, and probably that the narrative also about nutrition being key in the development is also something really that we need to take forward. Chris, would you like to add to those takeaways from this morning?
Just one very quick point, I think, because I think it'd be good to get to the discussion between Dan and Asma on the fantastic research that they've been conducting on financing. And my point to add, I think, is the one that was made around the importance of evidence informing priorities. So yes, in lots of discussions we're having over these 2 days, a recognition of the vital importance of government leadership, of identifying country priorities integrated into different sectors, and the importance of alignment of financing with those priorities. But of course, yes, those priorities need to be aligned with the evidence about what works in terms of interventions, programs, services in different sectors that really can contribute to better nutrition. So, yeah, and I guess the last point on that is that really to ensure that that happens, multi-stakeholder mechanisms at a country level that are bringing different stakeholders together with the evidence that they have are the spaces where strategic priorities can be identified and also where accountability can happen as well.
Thank you so much. So supporting country priorities, but also based on evidence available from the research. Now we will go to the main findings of the research, and I will hand over to you, Dan, to present this.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Greetings, everybody. We do know it's late in the day. You've listened to a lot. So in a moment, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hook to provoke you and keep you attentive. But I'd like to introduce first, as Sonia had said, Asma and I have recently authored a paper on nutrition finance following research and inquiry that we've conducted. But I want to call out that we've had 2 other authors on that work, which were Rosie Cowper, standing in the back from the SDG 2 Hub, and Elizabeth Margulis, also from World Vision, who were our co-authors on this paper. So what we did not do in our research was look at a question of how to generate more nutrition finance. Our inquiry wasn't quantitative. Rather, it was about how to manage global nutrition finance better. And what we came out of in our inquiry, which was across 19 interviews with 20 global experts from different kinds of institutions, development banks, Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, a couple of bilateral donors, other multilateral representatives, some NGOs, technical experts, fantastic group of people. What we came out of from those discussions was not necessarily what we anticipated going in, which makes it that much more interesting for us. The hook for all of you is that, as Asma was just alluding to, when we started our inquiry, it wasn't in the context of the global aid contraction that we now find ourselves in and that we're all concerned about. But as we look at what we learned in our research and the recommendations that we're making, we believe that they resonate very well with the kinds of adaptations, innovations, integrations, and efficiency that we are all now faced with. And so my challenge to you, or my encouragement to you, is that as we are sharing on our paper, please think about how does this help us, how do these kinds of recommendations help us move forward in the context we now find ourselves in and working a bit differently than we did before. So we're not going to summarize the challenges that we identified as part of our research. Read the paper and you will see that. We're going to jump to 5 recommendation areas that were the high-level outcomes, and I'm going to ask Asma to start with the first couple of them.
So I'll speak about the global level recommendations. Through all the interviews, there was a clear sense, and I think we've discussed this throughout today as well, so this won't come as a surprise to anyone, that there is a lot of fragmentation in the nutrition space, and we need to be doing a much better job to align financing around country-level priorities. So a global level recommendation, through the interviews, lots of ideas were thrown out. There was no consensus on a concrete way forward about, how do we need a new global fund for nutrition, or it was discussed in all the interviews, but that question was not clearly resolved. So we didn't lead with it as a recommendation. What did come through was really we have a lot of existing mechanisms and some new ones, like the Global Alliance that was mentioned this morning that came out of the G20. We have existing financing mechanisms. They need to be strengthened and focused on multi-sectoral nutrition action, and they need to be working together in greater alignment so that we're filling the gaps. That, countries are not being left behind, regions of countries are not being left behind, interventions are not being left behind. There needs to be much better alignment there. And then there needs to be stronger coordination mechanisms. And I'm going to now call out Karima from Yemen, who we were chatting after the morning session, and she said, actually, coordination doesn't go far enough. Coordination is really is voluntary. People can choose to coordinate or not. What we need is convergence at the country level. So I'm putting that out there for further discussion, hopefully in the Q&A. But we have existing mechanisms also for greater coordination or convergence, including the Sun Movement, including the multi-stakeholder platforms that exist at country level. How do we strengthen those platforms and trust them to bring resources, bring the knowledge, the know-how, and the attention of different organizations together? So I think we've created these mechanisms over the last 15 years at least. A number of institutions have been created, but are we using them as effectively as we could and we should? And with 5 years left to achieve the SDGs and the global nutrition targets, at a time when aid resources are being withdrawn, and at a time where we face crisis upon crisis, it is really important to look at the institutions that we currently have and really push for them to work more effectively together. We don't have time for new initiatives, building new institutions. Let's use the ones we have more effectively now. So those are there's one more global level point, and that is really around advocacy. And that's us. We really need to do a better job of positioning nutrition as a development imperative. Despite all the evidence that we have, built up and shared over the last 15 years since the 2008 Lancet, this is still a relatively niche issue. And we are not yet at a point where we're communicating effectively the importance and the urgency to strengthen nutrition from a development perspective. And we still need, that case needs to be made. In some countries, it's being made much more effectively. In others, at the global level, it depends on what else is happening. Sometimes there's a lot of attention on nutrition, and right now, it's really hard, when $8 are being pulled away, it's really, and you're seeing crises of malnutrition develop, it does seem harder to make that case. So I do think that there's more work to be done on advocacy and more work to be done to really integrate nutrition and demonstrate how nutrition contributes to other sectoral goals as well. So those were our two main global recommendations. And Dan, maybe you can speak to the national level ones.
Thank you, Asma. So we went into these interviews with lead questions about recommendation on global architecture for nutrition finance. And many of the interviewees immediately started saying, this is what needs to happen at the national level. Global question, this is what needs to happen at the national level. So finally, we began to assimilate that and realize that the effectiveness, any proposition globally, is intrinsically linked to what the capacities are at the national level. And subsequently, there was a wonderful array of recommendations for system strengthening at the national level. But the system strengthening, as Asma had noted, needs to start with political leadership. And so many of the respondents said, look, you can't move nutrition forward in a country without very clear highest level leadership. Highest level meaning presidential, prime minister, vice president. They need to own it, and they need to commission it, and they need to ring fence it so that it has authority. And if you think about it, how many countries have a ministry of nutrition? So this authority needs to be created. It needs to be very clear to start. Secondly, the systems within government need to be strengthened to manage finance at a national level and sub-nationally, and track where nutrition-specific investments and nutrition-sensitive investments are going, so that there can be an accountability, okay? Those are capacities that need to be built. Nationally, we need to see governments coordinating donors at that level also, so that the donor investments that can come into a country are synergistic, and they integrate into the national nutrition plan that needs to be in place as well. We're under a little time constraint, so I have to accelerate a little bit. Data collection, we had a lot of great discussion about the need for improved nutrition data collection. That goes to the point of implementation and is brought up through the systems for subnational and national level reporting and strategic planning processes as well. I want to call out this morning my twin brother, Dr. Sinamo here, was presenting on the Sokoto Declaration process in Ethiopia, a great example of how many of these elements need to be brought forward by government and strengthened there. So I might stop there. I think it reinforces a number of the developmental processes end-to-end that need to be strengthened at national level. But the key message there that we heard from interviewees also was that that's about efficiency. And through that efficiency, we can improve domestic resource allocation towards nutrition, and we can improve development assistance allocation, because those efficiencies become catalytic for donors as well. Maybe, Asma, if you'd like to take a final word in regards to advocacy, and we probably won't talk about innovative finance, but...
Yeah, well, I think I made the point on advocacy. We just, on the innovative finance, we did ask whether, what role innovative finance has in this area. And I think one thing that came through strongly is there is an important role for innovative finance, but it has to be backed by public finance. That the public sector, public investments really need to pave the way for the private sector and innovative approaches. But that there are also approaches within the public sector around taxation, around repurposing agricultural subsidies. So there are things that governments can do on their own to mobilize additional resources that currently are not being deployed as much as they should be. So.
Thank you so much for those very key, interesting findings. And we will now go specifically to mapping, deep dive country mapping of Pakistan. And I will hand over the floor to Irshad Danish to do this. Irshad, the floor is yours, please.
I think we agreed that I'd just give a very quick introduction to Danish, and it's certainly what Danish has to say is the most important. Country voices and country priorities is what we're talking about, and how we align with those. But just to frame, I think, what you're going to talk about, Danish, I think the question now is, what is the implication of what we've just been hearing for the nutrition advocacy community? If we're talking about countries mobilizing resources for the implementation of their priorities, and we're talking about aligning international support with those priorities, what does that mean for the way that we work as a global nutrition advocacy community? And I guess that many of us in this room see ourselves as nutrition advocates. There was a meeting in April last year in London that was convened by a number of organizations, I think, including the SDG 2 Advocacy Hub and the Sun Movement Secretariat. And we were discussing exactly this question: how do we avoid being fragmented as a nutrition advocacy community? And I think one of the answers to that question was, well, if we're putting country priorities at the center of everything that we do, and we're trying to encourage alignment with those country priorities, that forces us, in a way, as a global nutrition advocacy community, to coordinate and align. That's what provides a North Star. Is that an appropriate expression to use in this context? But it's the country priorities that is the North Star that should be guiding the way we're working as a global nutrition advocacy community, I think. One other sort of perspective in that is that I think there are implications for the role of the Sun movement, particularly as it's developing its 4.0 strategy up to 2030. I've always understood the Sun movement as providing a big tent that kind of brings stakeholders together at different levels, encourages spaces and platforms, multi-stakeholder platforms at country, global, possibly at regional level as well, increasingly, where we can coordinate and make sure that the support that is being provided to countries is aligned with their priorities. So I think there are big implications for this discussion about how we work together as nutrition advocates, and the extent to which we do that within the context of the Sun movement, and making sure the Sun movement has the resources and the capacities, particularly at a country level, to do the things that Dan and Asma were talking about. So that's enough from me. But I think because we're talking about country priorities, I get very detached and bored if we're talking about those in the abstract. I think we can only talk about them if we're talking about particular country priorities. which is why, Danish, you're here, and I think you've been doing quite a lot of thinking and discussing with other stakeholders in Pakistan about what are the country priorities and how do you communicate those, and what kind of support would you like from nutrition advocates to help mobilize the resources aligned with those country priorities. So, Danish, over to you.
Thank you very much. And well, I have a small presentation, if you allow me. If someone is running that presentation. So basically, yeah, so we have. Good. So first of all, I would like to share what is country situation, what is nutrition situation in our country, and then what are gaps in nutrition financing and how global community can support us in mobilizing more resources for nutrition. So we are facing malnutrition crisis, which is very, you can say, worsening as well. In last 3 decades, there is slight change in some nutrition indicators. For example, if you look at stunting, so it was 44% in 2021 National Nutrition Survey, and it's slightly improved. Now it's 40%. Similarly, if you look at wasting, so it's 17.7%, which is above emergency ratio, which WHO mentioned. So, and it was less than that. It was less than 15% in earlier survey. Similarly, there is slight improvement in exclusive breastfeeding rate, which has improved from 38% to 48%. And micronutrient deficiencies are really a big problem for us. More than 50% children are vitamin A deficient. Similarly, they are anemic, and there is a lot of anemia in adolescent girls and boys as well. And obesity and overweight is also another growing concern for us. And we have good, legislative and policy framework at country level. We have multi-sectoral nutrition strategies. In all provinces, we have national multi-sectoral nutrition strategy. And similarly, we have multi-sectoral nutrition action plan as well. I'm not sure how to move. Can someone help with that? So similarly, we have mandatory fortification laws. We have protection and promotion of breastfeeding laws in all provinces, but implementation of those laws is poor. And you can imagine in last, from 2021, no case was actually reported against breast milk substitute code violation. So this law came in 2001, and its implementing body, Infant Feeding Board, was notified in 2009, and its first meeting was held in December 2014. So you can imagine how these laws are being implemented. So as I mentioned that we have multi-sectoral nutrition action plan, which estimate there is a need of around 1,788 billion rupees starting from 2023 to 2030. And this year, 227 billions are actually estimated that we require 227 billion rupees to implement nutrition intervention this year. And overall, there is no systematic analysis of funding gaps. In one province in Sindh, it was estimated that there is funding gap of 75%. So, and this is almost similar situation in all provinces. And then if we look at how we have been working to mobilize our resources, so frankly, that is not a hopeful situation. Resource mobilization for nutrition is actually not priority of policymakers. Parliamentarians are bit sensitized, and some civil society alliance members have been working with them closely, and we were able to actually orient around 500 parliamentarians on value of investing in nutrition. But, policymakers and government people who are actually in office, they actually do real things. So actually, they are not very much serious around mobilization of resources for nutrition. And then there is lack of coordinated donor engagement. We have a donor network in Pakistan, but that is not very much functional. And similarly, we have another coordination mechanism, which is called Nutrition Development Partner Forum. So different donor, INGOs, and technical agencies work together there. But usually what happens, these donors are not talking to each other. So they are working in silos, they are working in different districts, but their coordination is not exemplary, you can say. So they should work together. Then funding disbursement delays. Sometimes funding is allocated by government, but usually due to bureaucracy, you can understand. So these allocations are actually, the funds are released very late, so that's why different projects are not implemented on time. Next, please. So what is needed from advocacy community, nutrition community? So number one is capacity building and technical support. So we need training on budget and expenditure tracking using AI and digital tools. Frankly, we have been tracking our budget and expenditure, but that is really cost. A lot of cost is involved, and it's a lot of efforts are also involved if we use that traditional method. So what we propose, we need to develop AI-based tool to track not only budget allocation, but also expenditure. And if we are able to develop that kind of tool for one country, that can be implemented in all Sun countries and in all low and middle income countries. So this is one suggestion and request as well. And in fact, I'm working with some AI people, and we are trying to find a solution, but some investment will be required there, and even technical expertise are also required to do that. And then resource mobilization for nutrition, support in identifying unfunded priority within multi-sectoral nutrition action plan to ensure targeted advocacy and resource mobilization. So we have well-written multi-sectoral nutrition action plans. We know what is needed, how much is needed, but we lack resources. And I think we should work together to actually prioritize some intervention. There is always funding scarcity, so we have to prioritize some intervention. So we need to fund some low-cost, high-impact interventions, like some intervention around 1,000 days, similarly large-scale food fortification and supplementation, etc. So we have to prioritize those intervention. And we also need support in development of a resource mobilization strategy. So we have a multi-sectoral nutrition action plans, and similarly strategies in all provinces and at national level, but that should be backed by a resource mobilization strategy. If we are unable to mobilize resources, we won't be able to implement all those strategies. and plans. And then guidance on engaging multilateral, bilateral donors for increased investment. Some donors, government of Pakistan is working with some donors like EU, World Bank, but we need support in, engaging with other bilateral donors. And one problem with Pakistan is we were in the list of low-income countries, and now we have moved to low middle-income countries. That's why Pakistan is not a priority of donors. But we have, a high burden of malnutrition. So we need to mobilize support considering our, malnutrition burden. And then identifying and advocating for sustainable domestic funding mechanism. So right now, donors are funding some projects, mainly those are humanitarian projects. There is need of sustainable funding mechanism, and I think we should find a solution to mobilize sustainable funding from external donors as well as from government. Next, please. In advocacy and policy engagement, so developing policy brief and advocacy material for sensitizing parliamentarian and policymakers. We already have some material, and Sun Civil Society Alliance is working closely, but we will require your support, global community support to develop evidence-based policy briefs, and then use of data visualization and real-life case studies to strengthen advocacy effort and capacity building for CSOs to advocate for increased nutrition financing. We had one TOT, and now we are replicating that at the sub-national level, but we need more support for that purpose. And then global advocacy support, leveraging global advocacy community to highlight Pakistan's national financing needs. As I mentioned earlier, that we have a huge malnutrition burden, and that should be highlighted at global platforms. And connecting country stakeholders with potential donors and technical partners and advocacy for aligning global funding commitments with Pakistan's high. So I already mentioned that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danish. This is extremely rich, and it's also extremely clear in terms of what support you need, what needs to happen from a country perspective, not only in terms of the money available, but also the capacities, the technical assistance that you need, also in terms of developing those, resource mobilization strategies that can be fruitful and can be financed moving forward. So thank you so much. I think we have a bit of time for a Q&A session, so we would like to hear from you, from your perspectives of how do we accelerate those results for financing in nutrition through our advocacy efforts. What is, what are the key things we should focus on, your reactions to the study, if you're aligned, if you're reaching, if we're starting to build this consensus that we're trying to get here. Happy for you to react. Either donors, countries, all your contributions are really welcome here. No one from the floor? Yes, please. Oh, okay. Mr. in yellow? Oh, okay. Dr. Sisai.
Okay. Thank you so much. Maybe for the first part, in terms of the engagement in the analysis finding, one of the issues that come out is, you mentioned coordination. So I think in many countries, through SUN or any other, like even the UN Nutrition Coordination Platform, there is some sort of coordination. So what was wrong in terms of bringing the nutrition actors together and advance the nutrition agenda at the country level? Because many countries, for so many years, they were trying to establish a coordination mechanism at the country level. And maybe for Pakistan, I can see you indicated that the 75% of the investment gap for your multi-sectoral nutrition action plan So what were the assumptions put in place to mobilize the funding gap to meet the nutrition targets in your country? Thank you.
Danish, you want to respond to that?
I want to respond to the last part of the question, actually. So actually, we have been working closely with the federal government as well as with provincial government, and with the civil society advocacy, actually. Two mainstream political parties have included nutrition in their political manifestos, and as a result, now this coalition government actually has developed a national program, national development program, which is called UDAN, and they have included nutrition there. And now, under that program, they are going to allocate some money. Initially, they will be allocating around 50 billion rupees, Pakistani rupees, and then they will gradually increase that amount.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Sisai. We think that there are some positive examples of coordination at national level, there's no doubt. And there's various kinds of participation. Global Nutrition Cluster, excellent mechanism. We think it should be leveraged as much as possible, but tends to focus more on a humanitarian set of issues, right? In the development space, or the greater space of a country's national nutrition plan, and the question of how all of the donors who are interested in supporting that plan in that country come together in a meaningful way to discuss let me say, the predictability of their contribution into that plan, so that that plan becomes sustainable itself. What we're pointing to a bit is coherence also, the need for donors to align their contributions to that plan or find where their strategies have a place within that national plan, and transparently bring their ambitions and their planning into that national coordination sphere, so that your government, as an example, can see and can negotiate, can see what is coming ahead. Asma offered the example, I think it was El Salvador, the El Salvadorian comment of sequencing of funding. Well, sequencing is a factor of knowing what, or projecting and having a predictable pipeline of financing, rather than trying to solicit financing for shocks alone or for intermittent kind of purposes and time-bound purposes. You need to build a sustainable flow of financing and bring all partners into that. That should be managed by government, should be brokered by government on the ground with all of those stakeholders. And I think there are pooled fund mechanisms. There are some coordinating mechanisms. We need to make sure that those best practices come to play everywhere.
Thank you so much. I'm asking about the people-centered approach for advocacy and the importance of this. Just one example: if a country, the leadership in the country are not aware of the nutrition situation, so how the global support, the global advocacy team will sensitize these government leadership as a first step. And then as a second step is to convene these high-level advocacy between the government and their partners at the a higher level. And just one comment for Pakistan. It is a huge gap that we are seeing. From my point of view, maybe it will be very helpful to divide this gap into phases. So instead of saying that we have all these billions of money as gap, you can maybe introduce a smaller gap that's linked to a program that you need just this small In Yemen, we have set accelerator programs. So we broke the big budget of the MSNAP into small budgets, the accelerator program. So instead of saying 100% gap, we can say that we need this, just little money for this, for accelerating the impact of the MSNAP. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karima. Maybe Asma or Chris would like to respond in terms of the people-centered advocacy. And thank you so much also for your contribution for Pakistan, because it's, that reminds me actually of what we're doing at the Sun Movement. This is really what it's all about. It's those exchanges with the countries where I'm hearing, Dr. Sisai come in, and then Karima supporting also the efforts of Pakistan. This is really heartening because it's at the core of everything that we're doing. So thank you so much for all those exchanges. Very helpful.
Yeah, I think you make a really important point about how we deliver the message and the evidence-based recommendations. We really have to understand the motivations of the person on the other side of the table, what they need to get done, and how investing in nutrition might help them. And I think we've been talking a lot about why nutrition is important. I think we've gotten that down, but if you've got a limited budget and you've got 10 other things you need to deliver, unless you can show that investing in nutrition is going to help you deliver those, you're going to deprioritize it. So I think we need to, as advocates, be more sophisticated in understanding the responsibilities and the work that different ministries have to get done, and really position nutrition as being supportive of that broader agenda.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I wanted to really emphasize the need for us to look at nutrition budget tracking and expenditure, because some of the challenges that you mentioned in terms of delays of payment is something that we also share in Sierra Leone. And sometimes the allocation, which is usually made, is not fully disbursed. So with the budget and expenditure tracking, it can really give us a clear picture for us to understand clearly where the gaps are in terms of the funding at a ministry level, and see how we can support as civil society. We're actually doing that with Action Against Hunger in Sierra Leone annually, because this is what I wanted to really emphasize, for it to be done annually, so that we understand clearly the expenditure and the budget that is being done at ministerial level.
Thank you so much for this contribution from Sierra Leone. Indeed, the budget tracking done on a yearly basis is certainly helpful to come up with facts in terms of a helpful advocacy to then have more resources allocated to nutrition and disbursed for nutrition. I think we have another question.
Okay, thank you. My name is Agnes Kirabo. I'm the chair for Sun Civil Society Network in Uganda. And I want to give a regional perspective, but also a country-specific perspective from my own country. When you look at the Eastern Southern Africa Anglophone group under the Sun Civil Society Network, I think it is approximately 14 out of the 16 countries that have costed nutrition action plans and tracked nutrition action plans. And my country is one of them. Now, to give you the real practice of what we do back in Uganda, it's number one, known to manage the nutrition action plan independent of the National Development Plan, because it is the overarching financing framework of the country. The Nutrition Action Plan is a government document. There is no reason why it should be managed parallel to the National Development Plan and the subsequent financing and the implementation frameworks. So that's what we did, making sure that the Nutrition Action Plan is aligned to the National Development Plan, the M&E frameworks, and all other financing frameworks. In that case, then, you are assured that the implementing agencies get committed to these interventions, and annually there is going to be budget allocated to those interventions, whether nutrition specific or nutrition sensitive. The other experience in our budget monitoring and expenditure tracking for nutrition in Uganda is that we have realized that everybody, including here in Paris, is yearning for proper coordination, but nobody is interested in financing the nutrition governance. This is where the biggest gap is, and we all know the costs that go to coordinating multi-stakeholders and multi-sectors for our single spine cause. So we realized that there is sufficient resources, at least for nutrition-specific and then nutrition-sensitive interventions, but very limited, almost no resources for nutrition governance. And this is my call to the nutrition actors here in Paris. If we really, our hearts and souls are to the nutrition coordination, then let us be specific when we are looking for resources, that we need resources for the nutrition governance. Lastly, is the issue of the multi-sectoral coordination, both at national but also at the municipal or local government level. We all know that nutrition interventions are implemented at the municipal or at the local government. So how do we have a replica of the multi-sectoral coordination at the national level, but also the coordination frameworks at the local government? In Uganda, Chair, finally, we have the Nutrition Action Plan at the national level, but we also have the district nutrition action plans. We have the sub-county nutrition action plans, city national action plans. Of course, coordination remains a very big issue, and through our advocacy 2 years ago under the Cascade program, we were able to push government to put at least national resources to nutrition coordination. And we secured a decision where all local governments were instructed to allocate at least 2% of their discretionary grants to nutrition coordination. So we should not get governments off this hook. If nutrition is a development issue, therefore we need national resources first to coordinate and to also undertake critical interventions as we are getting resources from all other issues. It's very difficult, though. It's easy to track government resources. But what, by experience, we are finding difficult in is tracking resources by other actors who are implementing nutrition interventions of budget, and they are not transparent. So if we are demanding for transparency, let us start by ourselves to be transparent and declare our plans and our investment, and be ready to be held accountable as we love to hold governments accountable. I submit.
Thank you so much. I think that your call was very clear, loud and heard. You're very right about nutrition governance that needs to be supported and financed. And also, yeah, we heard you very clearly on the national resources first, and on the tracking that requires also transparency and sharing from all the stakeholders. Do we have a last intervention from the floor? Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you. I'm Teresa Gonzalez. I'm the coordinator of U4SAM program. Is it true that what Asma mentioned, better can be done? It is true. But I think we have a path for having this a situation for being coordinating. So we are our promise funding for the European Union. We are working FIAP and Expertise France, the Spanish cooperation and the French cooperation. And we have had the funding from the European Commission. And we are very coordinated with SAN, with Sonia, with Tendai, with Francisca. It is true that better can be done. We are trying to work on it. We are trying to align what we are doing to have a strategy, what is very important for us. But we are working in the regional dialogues with the countries. We are also working with technical assistance, always in coordination with SAN, in trying to help the countries to find out their commitments and to have these indicators for this accountability, for knowing that they are achieved. And also we have been working with the civil society networks. So yes, we can do more, but we are in the good path, I feel. And well, thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yes, indeed, I can concur. And also thank you warmly for all the contribution to prepare the Sun countries for the N4G summit. We've done a lot of efforts, and we've seen that it's coming together. It's still a challenge to make the momentum last, and I think that it's also the idea overall about this session on we have, I think, really the beginning and the basis of a consensus, but how do we make it last after the N4G summit? How do we keep everyone mobilized in support of those commitments that are being made here? Because in the past, there were also a lot of commitments made, but there's also a bit of gap in between the summits. And this is why we all need to make sure that we are supporting the materialization of those commitments from countries. This is extremely key, that we hold each other accountable. And one way forward is really, I think, building on from the integration agenda that is also being put forward by different donors, by FCDO, by the World Bank, by IFAD, and others, but also governments that signal their support to the compact, the Global Nutrition Compact Initiative through the Sun movement. Also, we have more than half of our Sun countries that already signal their interest, and I think this keeps increasing because, again, we need to recognize that the situation is very different from even when the study was conducted. The financing landscape has changed drastically, and this needs for enhanced coordination actions. We don't have the luxury to go one by one with different initiatives. We need to be under one tent, as Chris was highlighting earlier. And again, just to summarize, I think that indeed those key findings from the research are absolutely helpful, and I would recommend you to read the full report in terms of making sure that we adapt our language, as Asma was saying, to the different audiences, and also Karima was saying this earlier, that we have the right, simple narrative that will be convincing, because we don't have time to waste for more action, accelerated progress for nutrition. So we need to tap into those sectors where we know the money is going, and notably the climate fund, Great Climate, but not only. We need to tap into those because the nutrition-specific funding is getting really, really, really limited. So we need to embrace that and work accordingly, all together as one, as working partners. There is a lot that we can build from, and this was also highlighted by the panelists of the session, notably from the London advocacy work, this research paper, all the colleagues and partners working together. This is what we need to do really. And again, positioning nutrition as this key development imperative. It's not a nice to have, it's essential to development. And one more thing that I would finish this session with is really the country-led, and you know that this is really dear in Sun's heart, country-led initiatives, and like we said, backed up by the evidence and the data that we need is so crucial. We cannot do advocacy without it. So thanking everyone for their sustained efforts, for our brilliant panelists today, for this research, which is also shedding lights on some of the helpful actions that we need to take forward together. And thank you so much also to all the audience today and to all the people that took the floor to share the experiences and to give their comments. Thank you so much, and we're in this together.